Hello, and welcome to Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry. I am Pastor Rhonda, your host for Celebrate Life today. And today I have joining with me a group of individuals that would like to talk about the what can schools offer to be more engaging for our young people as we return from COVID and things come back. And I'm not going to call it a normal. I'm going to call it a new normal. And so, as we come back to this new normal, we really would love to talk about the health of our young people and what the schools can do to keep them engaged. And I am going to turn it over to Pastor Pat Vargas, who will introduce our guest today.
Thank you, Pastor Rhonda. Sure glad to be here on this Celebrate for Life today. We definitely have reason to celebrate, and the point is that we're trying to be post-pandemic, and yeah, we're getting there. And as we get there, we have to learn how to live in it. Like you said, back to some normality, but a new normal. And thank you for allowing my to come on and talk about education. That's
Not a problem.
exciting today. Exciting. I have three friends that came with me today, and I'm very excited about it. We have Mr. Steve Sanders, who is an educator, and he's been an educator for quite a while. He's providing an inspiring environment that promotes excitement, enthusiasm, and engagement for learning. And he serves as the TK to 12th grade programs and grants coordinator in an interim middle school teacher at Lifeline Education Chartered School. So let's give an excitement, yay, for Mr. Steve. I'm so excited that he's here with us. And he has a great topic for us, for the students, for the parents, and especially for the church. And the church is, we need to be educated on everything that's going on in this world in order for us to have a profitable church life, a profitable faith life. So we're all excited. It's Mr. Steve. And then we have Miss Beck. We have the lovely Susan Jackson. Beck has been an educator for over 20 years. She is the founder of the Dove Club Girls Mentoring Program. And currently, she is a student at National University and is a student intern at Los Angeles Southwest College in the Career Pathways and Job Center. Susan has to support students succeed in their academic and career achievement. Yay, we have Susan Jackson with us today. Let's give us a cheer. But we just come without having Mr. Gary on here with us. Mr. Gary is a native Angelino. He's a Laker fan. Oh, I'm sorry, Gary. Sorry, but that's okay. It's always next year. And then former lawyer, corporate recruiter, author, and creator of a soon-to-be-released learning course called Power Learning. So thank you for coming, my friends. Thank you for being here with us. And thank you, Pastor Rhonda, because we're excited today and what we're going to learn today and what the topics that our presenters are going to bring. First is Mr. Steve. He's going to talk to us today about how can schools better serve students post-pandemic to become more engaging for students. So let's go, Mr. Steve. Let's get excited. Let's make those classrooms blossom, or let those online classes be what we need for our children. Mr. Steve.
Thank you, Pastor Pat. Thank you, Pastor Rhonda. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I should say, to everyone. And yes, so today I just wanted to share with you guys some of the different strategies that we have kind of used at the schools that I've worked with during the beginning of the pandemic and as we transition, like Pastor said, into the post-pandemic. One of the things that always comes to mind when I'm working with my students is a quote from Benjamin Franklin where he says, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn." And one thing that I have noticed, Pastor, over the years, and even during this particular situation, is when you involve the students in their learning, asking them questions, finding out what they're interested in, seeing what it is that can be brought to the classroom to be able to tie it into what they're learning. That's how you get them to be fully engaged in what's actually happening at school. And so some of the things that we have been putting into place is just making sure that we understand what student engagement really is, what that definition looks like, how it can come, how we can make that come to life for the kids. And then also to understanding the benefits that it brings for the students. We noticed, like I said, once we started doing our lessons and then asking feedback from the students at the end of the lesson, and then later on, we transitioned and started asking feedback from the students at the beginning of the lessons, asking them what it is that they're interested in learning about and how can we bring that into the classroom to make it more exciting and engaging for them. And so that has led us down this pathway of coming up with different lessons that are centered around space exploration and coming up with business proposals, different types of entrepreneurship ideas that the students came up with themselves in order to say, you know what, I would like to maybe start a business like this once I get out of school. So having those kind of surveys and questionnaires for the students really helps to engage them in the learning. Another thing too we notice is just different types of engagement, because we know that students all learn differently. So that's why we have things, that's why we have the title differentiated instruction, because we know that every student is not going to learn exactly the same way. So being able to be flexible in our lessons, being flexible in how it is that we present it to the students, again, helps to drive that engagement level to the highest that it can be. Also, too, teachers are right now, at least the teachers I'm working with, we're looking at our classrooms, how they're set up, how we might be able to change some of the furniture and the arrangement of how our groups are set up, the student desks are set up, even where the teacher's desk is set up, where your library might be, if for some teachers who do have that in their classrooms. We're just looking at all those different arrangements as well to figure out how the classroom can flow better, so that way students can really feel like ownership of their classroom and feel really welcome when they come back into the classroom. And then last but not least, of course, is that social emotional piece, making sure that they feel very welcome when they come into the classroom. I know that when I was in the classroom, a lot of times when the kids would come in and see their workup, and they would see the different things that we're going to be talking about this week already posted up in the classroom, help to get them excited about what the topic was going to be as we're getting ready to discuss it in the classroom. And then one article that I did put up there, Pastor, and just in case the audience does want to take a look, was an article that was written by an author from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where she was able to interview one of the deans of students there, where she just made a very valid point, which I think a lot of schools need to take into consideration. And that is that schools need to understand that one size or one way of doing things doesn't fit all. So therefore, if they can start identifying now what it is that the student population that they serve is interested in, that I think is really going to make schools more engaging for the students as we do transition back into that in-person, or if some schools are continuing with that virtual learning, just to keep them engaged and keep them excited about learning and want to come to school. So that's my take, Pastor, on how schools can engage students. Just making sure that to involve them, making sure that they ask them questions, making sure that they conduct surveys and gather information, and also to talk to the parents too, asking the parents what it is that they saw happening with their students, what did work, what didn't work, so that way that all that can be taken into consideration as they're planning this new journey as we come back from the pandemic. So thank you, Pastor Pat.
So what age group of the students are you working with? Are you recommending this from pre-K through high school, or what age grade, what age ranges?
You know what? I know it might sound funny, but those TK and kindergartners, they have personalities and they do know how to express themselves. I know that some of the kindergarten classrooms that involved with, they were able to ask him just, in general, some of the things that they enjoy about school and why. And most of the times they are able to express what it is that they enjoy and would like to see more of in school. And of course, as you get higher up into the grades, it's going to become more detailed as far as what it is that they would like to see. I know some of the things that have came up with our middle school and high school students is more of the flexibility piece. I know a lot of them during the pandemic, they were able to utilize some of this time to find out a little bit more about what they can do to start taking college coursework at the local JCs, along with working to finish their high school diploma at the same time. So some of them were even starting to look into those kind of avenues. And then our older high school students were even looking at getting jobs as they were working on their high school diploma and looking into taking that coursework at the JC. So some of them were really utilizing this time during the pandemic as we, as the adults, were trying to get everything in place. They were really utilizing the time to really see how they can benefit themselves.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Steve.
Thank you.
Mr. Steve, thank you for the presentation. But as I said it, as I was listening to you, that in regards to faith-based, we know that every person has a purpose and a plan in their lives. And as a grandmother for a 4-year-old, I've noticed that she has her own purpose. And she loves music, and she creates her own songs, and she creates her own beats and everything already at 4 years old. And Mr. Steve, I, as a grandmother and even as a parent, what kind of engagement, what are the things that parents or grandparents or even the church should be doing to engage in young people's lives for their purpose and their plan in their lives?
Well, again, I think I would say, Pastor, that they can do the same things that I'm even suggesting and what I've already done with students at school and even at our church. We did the same type of surveys that I conducted with our students, and it really helped us out, even when it came to the faith base. Some of the students really didn't know some of the stories that were in the Bible, as far as Daniel in the lion's den and other characters like that. And so once we collected this information as the youth department, we sat down and we said, you know what, this is what maybe our vacation Bible school lessons could be about for the students, or even when they're in children's church, have the youth pastors focus on these and then tie it in to how the students can take these examples and into the real world, or even into some of the scenarios that they might experience in their age group. And then as far as that music piece, I agree with you, Pastor. I know that our school is doing a great job of incorporating music, technology, robotics, different things that the students are interested in. Because once the students know that we have buy-in in what it is that they're interested in, then they know that we're there to support them. And then that's going to increase their engagement and excitement to want to come to school and say, yes, okay, I'll do what you want me to do because I know I'm going to get to do this later on. Yes. So we just have to be able to work together and have those conversations with our students, getting to know them, getting to understand how they learn, because some of them learn through music. So that's where you can use mnemonics and other different types of musical or auditorial methods in order to keep them engaged. Whereas if you have a kinesthetic learner, then you would have more hands-on activities, more project-based learning. So you just have to, again, find out a little bit more about your students, learn how they like to learn, and bring that into the classroom to get them engaged.
Thank you, Steve. I know that it's exciting, this grandmother, because they're teaching me all this kind of technology and teaching me about beats. 4 years old, 4. So I'm very excited about that. I'm excited because I have asked some of my young people at the church, how did they feel during the pandemic, and how do they feel when they go back to school? And they're excited about going back to school and engaging. So thank you, Mr. Steve. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Our second speaker is my girl, Susan. Susan, and she has a Dove Club information on mental health, social, and emotional aspects of students going back to school. You might need to help us too, as parents and grandparents, to give us some of that social stability after they go back to school. But thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Pat, and thank you, Pastor Rhonda, for allowing me to be here on your platform, Celebrate Life Today. I'm so grateful to be here, and thank you again, Pastor Pat, for the invite, as well as Mr. Stephen Gary, my board members, as well as Pastor Pat, my board member for Dove. Thank you very much. I do want to share about the Dove Club organization because I'm very excited where it's going. I just want to give a little background about Dove. It started in a Christian school with a co-teacher of mine. And at the time, we observed the girls in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. We kind of observed their behavior, friendships, communication. And we thought, we want to turn this around. We're in a Christian school. They have to face the real world. How can we guide them? So we came up with a lunch club. That's where Dove originated, which is the students brought their lunch to the classroom, and we would talk to them about friendship. We would talk to them about etiquette, academics, and leadership. And so after I left my school and I went to another school, I wanted to have Dove to continue. So I did speak with the principal at the time, the school I was at, and he said, go for it. You can bring Dove here. And so I just allowed myself to be open and to help the young ladies in the Compton district with Dove, and I brought it into the school. And it has been really an amazing joy to see how the girls are changing. And so just a little bit about Dove. It is a girls empowering program for the ages of 10 through 18 and also seasoned young ladies. And we discuss our 6 pillars, which are academics, leadership, community service, etiquette, social emotional intelligence, and we have social media responsibility. And so I want to train and teach young ladies in this 6 tenets because I believe they're going to experience this in the world. And so Dove is mobile in schools for 8 sessions, and we discuss these various tenets, and we have workshops and activities. And most of all, it's a sisterhood. It's where the girls come together and they learn how to be friends. They learn how to communicate. They learn about sharing with each other, and most of all, being friends and supporting each other. And as a young girl growing up, I wasn't in clubs. I didn't know really about clubs and friendships and different things like that. Although I had friends, I just didn't know how to be one. So I really wanted to bring Dove in this avenue in schools to help girls in these 6 tenets. So right now we are in our social media digital world, 8 sessions. We started in April. We will be having our last class this Monday. And the girls learned about the pros and cons of social media. And it's very interesting how they have a phone, they know about the computer, they know about Facebook and Instagram, but they don't know the seriousness of it. And like I share with them, that little phone is like a little computer. It goes everywhere you go, and it can meet all kinds of people across the world. So you have to be careful how you use it. So I'm teaching them how, again, the pros and cons. And so if you want more information, go to doveclub.org and subscribe to Dove or subscribe to our membership, and someone will get back to you, even myself personally. So I wanted to segue into the social emotional part of the post-pandemic and going back to school, because that's what Dove will do. In the sessions, we will talk about things like a post-pandemic and the girls going back. And how do you, what's the emotional component about this? Because the students are concerned. As I am in school now, I'm back at school with the students, so I see a lot of their concerns. I see a lot of concerns among the teachers. So how we are dealing with this, we are making sure that the students are using the COVID-19 precautionaries, masking up, social distancing, washing your hands, and making sure they have an understanding of that, because kids, they don't really see the I can't stand next to you. They're very interactive, so they want to come close to each other. So it's a little bit of a challenge saying, hey, you have to remember, you have to stand 6 feet apart. For the most part, with the parents' help, the students do understand that they have to abide by the COVID rules. So that's one. Remember to use the COVID precautionaries, have the students follow them. And the second thing is to discuss their fears and anxieties. So when the students came back, we had to address, the desk has the plexiglass. You can't just talk to your friend. You just can't come up to your teacher. You have to wait till your teacher come to you, and your teacher has to be at least 6 feet apart. So that's a difference too. And also students wondering, am I going to get sick? How am I going to breathe in this mask? So we are training our students. It sounds weird, but we're training them how to play. How do you play and run with the mask on? You're not used to that. How do you breathe? So when you feel yourself overwhelmed with breathing, just relax and walk at recess time. So we're teaching them not only about their fears and anxiety, but how to be accommodated by using the mask and how to social distance. And the other thing is combating those fears. How, as teachers, are we doing this? How are we monitoring the students? Where we are watching for isolation. Are the students isolating themselves, like afraid to be with your friend or talk to your friend? So again, students can't interact. It's just from a distance at this time. And also their mood. Some students seem a little bit sad because their friends are not there. School does not look the same. It's different, and it is right now. And so we do still have activities, but they are a little bit different. So we may play kickball. You are at a distance, your friend is at a distance, and you're kicking the ball. So we want to make sure you're still active. And then for parents, watch your students' sleeping habits. Is your child sleeping less because they have a fear of going to school? That's something to address with your child and the teacher as well. And then also the lack of enjoyment. We want to watch, again, those mood swings. We don't want students coming to school saying, I don't want to be here. We know they've been home for a whole year, but we want to make school fun again. And we want to make it where they will relearn the environment, but relearn it in a positive way. And then the last points I want to address is on that social and emotional component. It won't change overnight. This is going to take time. It may take a whole school year, and it's okay. And that's what we want our students, as well as our teachers, to know. It's okay to thrive the way your class is thriving or the students are thriving. We want positive outcomes for our post-pandemic return to school. And also, I want to readdress communication is the key. We want to keep enforcing those COVID-19 precautions in a positive way, in a caring way. And the last thing is to be compassionate. That's what we want to be. We've been through a pandemic, so we want the compassion and the support to be there. So thank you so much, Pastor Pat and Pastor Rhonda.
Thank you, Susan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Instructed me. I know what to look for, grandchild, and also some of my youth at the church. One of my young ladies who belongs to Dove Club, and by the way, Dove Club is associated with our church.
Yeah.
That all churches need to find a social club for
Right.
the youth to come. And we have adopted a apartment building, a low income apartment building, and we're excited about bringing the youth back to our church, but we're going to have something for them to look for, and it's the Dove Club, the girls.
Yes.
So
I
we're
can't
excited
wait.
about that. And but my young lady said isolation. I felt so isolated.
Mhm.
I felt like I had no friends. So depression came about. And
Right.
so I would call her often, not like other youths call us. So it's very important that churches and parents,
Right.
grandparents will watch their children. So thank you, Susan. Now I know
Thank you.
more and excited about Dove Club coming to the church, and we're building from our church with Dove Club. Thank you.
Yes. You're
So
welcome.
we definitely need to find the men's group that comes in and partners alongside of Dove Club.
Uh,
But-
Pastor Rhonda, I got the Epic's Child that's coming to and it's a men group.
okay, awesome.
Kevin Moody is over there.
Okay.
So,
So that's called the Epic Club.
Epic Child, CHILD, Child.
Oh, Epic Child. Okay. Amen. Amen. So you know what, but Susan, as you were talking, I was thinking, I said, my goodness, the children have gone through playing on the field with each other, touching, playing tag and all that stuff, to home alone, isolated, computer technology, what have you, having to go back into the school yard, but you stay over there and I'm gonna stay over here. We can only play kickball and not tag.
Right.
But there's gonna be a whole new wave
Yes.
of how our young people interact with each other and I hope that folks are ready for the relationship building that is going to need to happen, so that we don't get to a place where we don't ever want to touch another human being, because touch is so important and part of the healing process.
Yes. And it's almost like you have to ask someone when I hug, not the students, but I'm just saying someone in general, like, at church. When I hug you, because we're at that point. Yeah.
And even if the student has to wait for the teacher to come to them, how many? Okay, because at the beginning of the pandemic, I talked to a young man. He was 10. And I asked him, how is school going on the computer and on Zoom? How are you liking that? He said, I don't like it very much. And I said, well, why? And he said, because in the classroom, the teacher would come to me and I can tell her where I'm having a problem. But on the computer, she only talks to the smart kids. That messed me up. One, because he didn't think he was a smart kid.
Yeah.
And to have this conversation with me, he had to be a smart kid.
Yes.
But then if the teacher is not recognizing or deliberately going to each and every child, and then circling back, the teachers could miss it unintentionally.
Right.
So the word to the teacher, please be intentional about reaching every child, at least once, if not twice.
Right.
Exactly. Because they're listening and they are still in that learning mode. As Mr. Steve pointed out, students learn differently. So I agree with you, Pastor Rhonda. The teacher has to at least follow back to make sure she's heard every child on that screen some kind of way throughout the day. Is really important. So that child can feel like my teacher heard me today.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in the classroom when we get back.
Right.
Because I teach a youth entrepreneur summer camp, which we now, with the Los Angeles Urban League, which is now also a year-round program. And in the classroom, it was easy to get to each child. And, you kind of realize that, I'm hanging out on the east side of the room. I need to move to the west side of the room. But even on Zoom, when all the pictures start moving all around, because somebody fell off, their internet fell off and they came back, they're not in the same space. So I can't get a system in teaching them even virtually. But and I just can't say it enough, the teachers have to be more aware. And we had to bring in interns to help us remain aware and making sure that each child was able to be touched and got the attention they needed. And we only had a class of 25 at a time with 2 teachers and 4 interns.
Wow.
Quite a bit of adults in the classroom.
Well, online, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, because it's a fast-paced class, and we need to make sure everybody gets it.
Right.
Did Mr. Steve, did you have something you wanted to say? You came off of, thought you were on mute. Did you have something you'd like to?
Oh, no, I was just going to add to or make a comment to what Pastor Rhonda and Susan were talking about as far as the different ways that they can make sure to check in with their students. I know that some of the teachers that I've been working with, what they did was they had a time frame within their day where they were able to either meet with small groups that they had collected based on how the students were learning or how they learned. And then they had like that interview time where they had that small group session where they would go into a breakout room. All right, how are you guys doing today? What is it that you guys learned today? What is it that you thought was best about today's lesson? And just having that interaction with them only for about 10, 15 minutes. So it was timed, but it did allow the teacher to kind of move around within their classroom to still be able to engage, even if it was virtually, with the students. And then that kind of helped to keep that relationship going as far as the students feeling like, okay, the teacher knows who I am. The teacher is understanding what it is that I learned, how I like to learn. He or she is, keeping they're interested in who I am and what it is that I like. So that was just one way that some of the teachers were able to kind of handle that kind of a scenario during this pandemic and even with the post-pandemic.
And I agree with you, Mr. Steve, because I work with students in breakout rooms, at least 5, and I'm able to assist those 5 in the needs of where they have challenging challenges in certain academic learning. So yeah, I can agree with those breakout rooms. They're very helpful.
All right. I'm excited. Yay. Thank you for giving us those pointers and preparing us and getting us ready to go back into school and helping us as a parent to know what to look for, those triggers and everything to look for. And this will help our, because as I was looking over a lot of news and newspapers and articles, and I noticed that a lot of our children were suffering from depression, suicide, and so we got a lot of work to do. So I'm really excited about all the topics that we're talking about today, because that will make our kids healthy, wealthy, and wise at the same time. Now we have a great speaker, Mr. Gary, our attorney, that I noticed in one of his bios that he was a current talent acquisition specialist at USC. And Gary had a lot of past community experience working with Black Law Institute in Watts, attending the Million Man March in Washington, D.C., and as a former board member of Have Faith Be Strong. So we're excited to hear Mr. Gary talk to about active learning techniques to assist students to become better learners. Mr. Gary.
Thank you so much, Pastor Pat, and it's really great to be here with everyone. And thank you, Pastor Rhonda. Just touching on my past background for a second, Pastor Pat brought up Have Faith Be Strong, and that's an organization that's probably close and dear to your heart. It was started by a friend of mine who lost 2 children to brain cancer. It was a very tragic situation. So that was really a great learning experience for me to be on that board. Brain cancer touches so many people, and it's so often and unfortunately, is a tragic situation. But I just wanted to recognize that, for my good friend Lance there and his son and daughter who are up in heaven right now. But in regards to active learning, and this really does dovetail very nicely with what Mr. Steve was saying as far as being engaging. Not only how can schools and teachers be more engaging, but how can students better engage with their material? I was taught, like many of us, traditional way. You get a textbook. I think getting a highlighter, that was like a luxury item. That's when you thought you were really doing something. And so the textbook was kind of like, the word that was the gold standard. Learn the textbook. But just learning from a textbook is really an ineffective way to learn. It's not efficient time-wise, and you don't remember that way. The reason why I wanted to create this course was from my own background. Mentioned I'm a former lawyer, but I did have 3 years of law school, and I had to pass the California bar exam. And it wasn't until law school where I really learned how to be a student, really learned what we call exammanship. And what the teacher explained to me, and this is as you get older in your classes, particularly in high school, that level and above, is you do not really get a lot of credit for your class participation, even your reading. You need to understand and comprehend the material, of course, but you don't really get a lot of juice out of all that time spent reading. And the gentleman explained this to me. He did have an exam course, which is just basically, how do I pass the law school exams? How do I pass my bar exam? And it was just focused on exammanship. How can I do better on the exam? And it's not by reading the textbook, not by highlighting, not by being, the teacher's, go-to person answering all the questions. And there's probably, so if I break out learning, it's what I call active learning and passive learning. Passive is kind of things we have to do. Generally you have to go to class, take notes, which can assist you, and take notes. Now, there's things to discuss in each of those items that can make each activity more effective, but that is really what I call passive learning. We're not really engaging with material. We're just kind of sitting there listening, being kind of non-active. Now, what really gets interesting for learning is in the active learning area. Now, in active learning arena, we, the student, the learner, we are doing things. The 3 primary methods: creating your own outline, making flashcards, and then taking practice exams. Those are the passive learning examples, I just mentioned. But if you can learn to do those 3 things, and you start incorporating that into your learning, your grades will skyrocket. If you're already an A student, then you will remain an A student. Maybe be able to graduate early from college, get into more colleges, pass your exams with much more ease, number one, and a much more efficient use of time. So when we get back to the topic of today's presentation, how can schools be more engaging? I would answer that by promoting active learning methods and not just kind of being a fly on the wall or kind of a teacher that's being a little bit lazy and just assigning reading without giving students an active learning type of situation or scenario. And these up on the screen are just a couple of examples of active learning and how we learn best. Coding class. If you go to a coding class, they're not going to give you a textbook to read. They're going to put you right behind the computer, and the teacher will teach you from a computer and get you hands-on with the material. And fortunately for all of us, pilots do not learn how to fly their planes from a book, right? They are put into what they call flight simulator, which is another form of active learning. So I just bring that up to show you how active learning can really be incorporated, how it is already incorporated in many scenarios, that we have. There's a saying that goes, never waste a good crisis. And I think that's so appropriate now for this class and this presentation, because I think the pandemic definitely revealed a crisis in our education and the way education is delivered, to students. It really shined a bright light on that. And this is a great opportunity, I think, for schools, number one, to reimagine how they are going to present materials and get students more engaged, as Mr. Steve said. And then for students as well, particularly students as they go from middle school to high school, it's kind of going to be up to you as a student in charge of your own life to also say, how can I be a better student? How can I be a better learner? And that is by learning these kind of active learning methods. And that's why I'm really so passionate about this, because that changed my learning situation, in law school. It's much more fun to be an active learner rather than just reading that textbook and then 20 minutes later you're fast asleep. This saves you time, and again, better yet, you have much more retention of what you've learned. It does no good, I think, to say, hey, I read 300 pages in that textbook, and then you can't remember what the heck you learned when it comes time for the exam. I don't know if that has happened to anyone. It certainly happened to me before. And then I learned, to kind of drill and kill, make those flashcards, put the topic on one side, put the answer to the flashcard, and just drill and kill, over and over. Repetition is the mother of skill. And this is how, you can increase your comprehension. You can actually leverage, again, for you older students in high school, you can leverage the opportunities that online learning has given us. You can get your college credits, but you can actually get these materials, take many more classes, and you can just skyrocket your learning by using active learning methods. And so I just have to stress that, like I said, never waste a good crisis. And here we are, the opportunity's here. And so I can't wait to release the course and share with anyone who wants to learn more about it. But yeah, that's where it's at right now.
Thank you, Mr. Gary, because really and truly, our kids need to know how to learn. They have to start all back over. After being out of school for almost a year, I go a whole school year. And it's really important on how to make the classroom come out to them. Show them that classroom is nothing. I know one of my members said, I said, are you ready to go back to school? He says, well, I'm kind of glad I didn't have to get dressed. I could sit there and look at the monitor and wake up when and roll over and see my teacher. And, but it's learning time now. It's school time now. And not just school time, but it's time for our kids to enjoy school and get something really out of it for their life. And so with the active learning that you're talking and to bring real life into the classroom and into the textbook is really great. And now I'm going to tell you a little story back in the day, Pastor Rhonda, when I was going to school and we were reading Julius Caesar and all that. And all my other classmates had gone to Italy and everything, and they could see it. I didn't have social media to bring it home. Now we do. Now we can go to Italy without going to Italy. So that I'm excited. Thank you, Mr. Gary.
Yeah, just touching on that, Pastor Pat, with staying, with the online learning and what Susan was saying about our own students' social, well-being. This is a chance, I think, because with active learning online classes, that a student can take time, have a good meal, a good breakfast, instead of, a piece of bread on the way in the car and they're being rushed out. I think this can help a student with their nutrition and actually, their well-being as well.
And I have to say that that's for the children that have the privilege of having breakfast.
Yes.
I have learned that, in fact, when I first started the program at the Urban League, I would cook and bring breakfast and lunch, because I heard a child say the only time I eat is when I'm at school.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the parents weren't paying to be in the program. So I didn't know what kind of backgrounds they were coming from. So I wanted to make sure at that time they were with me all day. But I wanted to make sure they had something decent, to eat, to be able to have some thinking power. And then the other is, how many times have you heard, when will I ever use this in my life? And with active learning, you are applying it right now. You won't hear them saying that because you can sit behind the pilot plane, even on the computer. You can sit behind the computer and code, even though to this day, I remember when computers came out. and I couldn't program then. I could make the computer do a lot of things, but I could not program, which is now that they're now calling coding, to make things happen. But they have hands-on experience to know what it is that they're doing, and then to be able to connect it to the next thing that they can do. Because even if you can't code, you know what it takes to make it happen. So now you know what you need to do to go to the next step, or who you need to hire to make sure your stuff works.
Even better. And school actually becomes much more fun when you get better grades. So it kind of, creates a great momentum, within yourself.
And I just want to add, going back in this post-pandemic and what I've seen students across the board in their academic learning. I've seen students who are advanced now, who are saying, I got this. Mr. Steve and I, we've talked about this. Students who are saying, like, I don't need to really be in the traditional classroom. I can take these courses, and I can, for example, a high schooler, and can possibly take courses from a JC and then be in their 2 year of college in advance. So I think this post-pandemic or this COVID-19 has allowed students who've been in the classroom bored and not challenged, who are challenged now and have been self-challenged throughout this whole process, to be advanced. And then we have seen those who may have had challenges that we can help them a little bit more in what they need to be helped with in terms of their academic learning.
Because I actually had a student who said, I'm going to get my AA before I get my high school diploma this year,
Right.
Because of the scheduling. So yeah. I'm like, wow. So they've already knocked out 2 years of college finances.
Yes. Money in somebody's pocket.
This is why I was saying earlier that as schools are deciding on how they're going to engage their students, flexibility is going to have to definitely be part of that plan, whatever that action plan is. Because as Susan just mentioned, as you mentioned, Pastor, as Gary has talked about active learning, there are some students, because of how they like to learn, they have been able to benefit in this pandemic platform, in this during this time. And so to force them to necessarily say you have to go back, I don't think that's the direction that schools should go. There does need to be that flexibility now, since a lot of students now have come to learn a little bit more about who they are as not only a person, but also as a learner.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about the hybrid? So will schools offer more hybrid education, where they're in class 2 days a week and online 3 days a week?
Based on some of the surveys as we're closing out our school year and we're asking students, that's where the majority of them are saying that they would feel comfortable in coming back to school in a setting that's set up more like that. Versus necessarily that traditional 5 days a week, 7 to 8 hours a day, or for even those who are there even longer because of work schedules for parents, and then they're there for the after school program for almost that 8, 9, 10 hours a day. So but yes, you're right, Miss Beck, that a lot of students are saying that if there was the option to be able to have a blended school schedule, a lot of them are saying that they would like to see something like that.
Yes.
A blended work schedule would work too.
It's
But
funny.
I
You
know.
mentioned that. It's funny you mentioned that, Pastor, because I was reading a couple of articles where there are some businesses after again surveying their staff, their employees, some, and then even looking at their financials. Some of them did see that, you know what, this has been financially beneficial, and then some corporations have even gone as far as sharing some of that financial benefit with their employees by providing bonuses or different things, incentives, in order for them to let them know that you're appreciated and thank you for working with us during this time. So
Right.
you're right, Pastor. Some organizations are looking that way.
And not only that, the churches are looking that way.
Mm-hmm.
My plan is that we will be on site plus Zoom or live stream continuously, because we were able to touch all over the world, and we were
Yeah.
able to touch a lot of our members who were sick and shut in, and we
Mhm.
were able to touch other organizations just right at our in our church. So the pandemic was a bit of a pill to take, but it also beneficial for us to learn how to use technology. And even my seniors, they're excited because they're using their smartphone and their tablet, and it's been a, and they work with their young people. In
Right.
yes,
And I
What can the church say? Amen.
Amen. I think it has benefited families too, because I believe families have been running and running and running, whether it was soccer practice, whether it's working late. I don't think people realize how busy they were. And the pandemic slowed all of us down
yes,
to really put things in perspective.
yes. A family relationship is
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah.
And close that door. Come in. Yes.
Yes.
However, as things are coming back around, I had a group of 16 students in a year-round program with entrepreneurship. And as school began to open, all of a sudden they couldn't come to class anymore, and they couldn't this anymore because they were in soccer and track and football and all these other things. And I was like, well, I appreciated that year that we had, but how are they going to balance all of that? Because now it seems like every sport, every extracurricular activity feels like they have to double time it.
Yeah.
And we have to be cautious that these young people are still people and going from 0 to 60 might be fine for a car.
Mm,
But what is it doing to the health of our young people?
right. That's a good point.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we should use the benefit of what Susan said to know that we were doing too much and that we need a balance.
Yeah.
They're going to receive much or gain, if any, loss. Some of it needs to be cut off and bring attention to their academics, and then kind of slow. And also in the health part of being athletes, but it's a balance that we need the parents to look at.
Yeah, I think parents really need to sit down with their child and give them a schedule or give them at least one activity. But everything I think is too much. Honestly, that's just my opinion. So we have to teach our children. You'll do this activity, one thing at a time. No football, basketball, and baseball in one year or one
What
semester.
season?
Yes. Slow down.
All right.
I'm curious about Mr. Stephen know more about vaccinations for the younger kids.
Mm.
Do you think they should be mandatory, or is it something that should be left? It's always up to the parent, but I guess as an educator, what is your feelings about the vaccinations?
That's a very good question, Mr. Gary. And being a father myself, I know my children are grown, but again, I would say that that's something that needs to just be in the hands of the parents. Personally, that's my opinion. I know right now that it is available to students who are, I think, at the ages of 12, the last time I checked the CDC website. So I know that it is available. And I know in talking with parents, I know that a lot of them have said that they like the fact that it is available, and they are the ones who are able to make the decision if they're going to allow their child to do it or not. So again, going back to, again, just allowing people to have buy-in and to have a voice in making decisions. I believe that leaving it in the hands of the parents and just having it available is a nice balance, I think, for right now, especially.
I agree on the balance. However, I also believe in education.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure our parents are completely educated on the pros and the cons so that they can make well-informed decisions.
Right.
Sometimes they're making them just because of history, and I get it. I so get it. However, make sure you have all the information that you can possibly have. I said all that you can have. Enough information to make an informed decision. That's what's key here. And to listen to the child as well, because some children really want to be vaccinated, but with education, I can't say it enough, make sure everyone's educated, and hopefully even at the same time, because if I get one piece of information from the school and another information from the news, or I look on the internet and I get CDC information, and or they're having a doctor talk, maybe on the Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry Today show. So, but we need to sit down in the same environment so that we're hopefully hearing the same thing and we're making decisions off of that. But I do agree that we have the right to make the decision on our own, that vaccines are available for 12 and over, and just make it so that everybody is on the same page. And to realize that the reason for the vaccine is that more people can live.
Right. Well, thank you, Brenda. We know that all that in regards to everything that's going on in regards to our children. And is there any questions or anything else we'd like to discuss? If not, go ahead.
Now we just have a couple more minutes to wrap up.
All right. You want to study? Say one word, but I've enjoyed this moment with them, and they have so much more to give. So maybe we can have them back, Pastor Rhonda.
Sounds good to me. I know we're going to have a sidebar when this call is over, too. Because we're still recruiting for the Los Angeles Urban League Youth Entrepreneur Program.
Sounds really good. And we're going to ask each person to give 30 seconds of something you want to say quickly. And then we will turn it back to Pastor Rhonda. Susan?
Well, I would just want to share that Gov is a program to teach young ladies how to be virtuous in this society. I think teaching young ladies to have appropriate values will train them to be strong women, empowered women. And so that's something that's where my passion is. That's where I would like to guide young ladies and be in their lifeline to make sure they are those women who we may look back at as a Kamala Harris. So again, doveclub.org. Membership is always available. And again, thank you, Pastor Rhonda and Pastor Pat.
Amen.
Mr. Gary.
To echo, I think it was you, Pastor Pat, you said earlier that, now is the time to kind of get back on the horse and get going again. We had that year, we took that year. Hopefully it was productive, or at least, able to rest and recharge. And so, like I said, I'm excited going forward that, it's time to kind of refocus and re-energize ourselves, find that pathway. It's a great time for education. 4 years college, maybe your ticket. It may be a 2-year degree, it may be vocational school, maybe starting your own business, but there's so many paths to take that, whatever path you choose, you can get there.
Mr. Steve, quickly.
All I just want to end with is just make sure that we listen to our children. Our children have voices. They are individuals, and they know what they like and don't like. So as you move into this direction of coming back post-pandemic, really take into consideration their ideas and thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Rhonda. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you next time. So, because I'm sure we're going to have another conversation on children, health, and schools. So until then, I say choose life, and we'll see you all next time.